Right in those episodes talking about what was the way that you could do less at home and how we redefine your success in terms of your business. And I completely forgot to tell you, why should what I say even matter? I forgot to tell you why any of my experience matters to you and the journey that you're on. My apologies for that oversight, and let's dive into my story, my journey of business and how I got here. I wasn't someone that grew up in a household where the expectation was that you would get a job, because I grew up on a farm in a small part of New Zealand in the Waitomo district, where we were on a 750 acre farm to begin with, and then we moved to a smaller place called Pew Pew, where we were on a slightly bigger farm, 2,500 acres. And until I was 15, I was going to be a farmer because that's what I saw mum doing. My mum was epic. She knew how to shear a sheep. And my dad had 4 girls. They had 4 daughters under 4.5. And I remember often people used to say to my dad, "Don't you wish you had sons? With a big farm like this, don't you wish you had sons?" My dad's comeback to that was always, "My girls can do anything your boys can do, and they do it smarter." Because his reasoning behind that was, maybe they don't have the brute strength to do it always, but they'll figure it out. And I remember a fundraiser that we did for the tennis club, and we were doing the shearing for a farm. Instead of them paying a shearing gang that's taking all the wool off a sheep, for those of you that don't know or are hearing my accent and struggling with it, taking all the wool off the sheep, and we get paid to do that because it's quite a big expense on a farm that have sheep. And we would go out as a tennis club and do all of the shearing for them, and the club would get paid instead. And Mum was there with her handpiece ready to shear the sheep, which obviously put the wind up some of the boys. They had to make sure they kept up with her. And then Dad was like, "My girls are going to boyo." And to boyo means to put the sheep in the pens at the back to make sure that the shearers never run out of sheep, because that slows them down. You don't want them to not have a sheep there to pull out to shear it. And Dad was like, "My girls are going to boyo." And then he got us all together and he was like, "Those gates, those pens, they never get empty." And all 4 of us, I don't even know how old we were, pretty young, probably like 5 through 10 maybe. And the 4 of us went out the back and we talked about how we were going to do it. And literally a shearer would take a sheep out the front and we'd put a sheep in the back. The pens were full the whole time, which over time they got a bit exhausted by that. And they were like, "Okay, we like it when we get to the last sheep because it gives us a moment to have a drink of water before we dive into the next pen." And that was one of the examples of how Dad and Mum were both super empowering about us girls, is that you can do anything you want to do. Sometimes you're going to have to think a little bit differently about it if you can't brute strength it. I mean, we were pretty small back then, and you can still do it. Up until I was 15, that's what I was going to do. I was going to be a farmer. I was going to run my own farm. I was going to ride horses and bring the sheep in and have cattle. And then at 15, Dad, I think probably what we would now term a midlife crisis, about the same age as me, at about 40, he decided that he was doing a really great job of raising great lamb and great beef on his farm, and then it was going up to Auckland and they were doing a piss poor job of selling it, and he could do better. This is a long time ago. This is 30 years ago nearly, that my dad was talking about gate to plate produce. And he got in with the local Universal beef packers and started taking the stock from the farm, processing it and taking it up to Auckland to sell it to hotels and restaurants. And Master and Daughters were born, where Dad was selling meat to hotels and restaurants. And at 15, when Dad started doing that, I went, I don't want to be a farmer anymore. I want to be a businesswoman. And people would always say to me, "Well, what sort of business do you want to have?" And I was like, "I don't care. I'm just going to be a businesswoman." And that has been the driving force behind all the different things that I've done over the years. It didn't actually matter what the business was. I've really enjoyed the adventure, the journey, the constant challenge of running whatever the business might be. And at 15, that's what I figured out that I was going to do. And when I left school at 17, I did a business degree majoring in accounting and marketing, which meant that after the first year I realised, there's not enough workload here for me. I'm bored a little bit because I've been that kid at school that had played sport and been in the cultural activities and done all the study and kind of done all the things. I had a lot of things in the air at the time, and I found just studying not enough for me. What I ended up doing was going and getting a full-time gig at a local accountancy firm and studying as well. And I did full-time study and full-time work for those 4 years that it took for me to get my business degree. And when I got to the end, I realized I don't want to be an accountant. This is not the part of business that I really enjoy. And from there, Mum and Dad were still running the meat business, but had decided that just selling a commodity wasn't going to work for them. They wanted to add some value. And so they'd got into making ready-made meals. Again, super, super leading edge, like way before ready-made meals are a thing. And Dad was like, we can't just sell meat for the rest of our lives. We've got to have to add some value. And so they went about designing these meals and this process for making the meals that was automated. Once we had prepped, and when I say we, I mean we, because the family all helped. Once we'd prepped the food, it would go into these inline ovens that worked on conveyor belts, and it would come around, and we had a robot. And again, we're talking 20 years ago. We had a robot that packed the food into the trays, and then would go into this machine, and it would get sealed, and it'd come out the other side. This was 20 years ago. It was super leading edge. And what ended up happening was a joint venture with McDonald's. And Mum and Dad in their business ended up entering into this joint venture to build these ready-made meals. Yes, when I say McDonald's and the Golden Arches, and yes, when I say McDonald's Chicago, the head office. And my mum always says she'd love to write a book. I'm pretty sure she wouldn't be allowed to, but she wants to call it Under the Golden Arches with No Qualifications. How cool is that for a book title? And it's true. Mum and Dad didn't do business degrees. Mum's a nurse by trade. Dad was a farmer and in the military. And they came in and they started navigating this journey with this big corporate. And my dad would say, I'm just a dumb farmer, which is not true. But that was literally the space that they came into. And they navigated through this joint venture with McDonald's. And about the time I finished my degree, that's what they were doing. And I jumped in and started running the meat business for them, which involved driving a little white refrigerated truck around Auckland and delivering to hotels and restaurants. Making sure that we were serving the needs of the clients, making sure everyone was paying their bills, like all the bits of a small business in my early 20s, which was a great way to learn. In fact, lots of people say to me, oh, but Sarah, you've got a business degree. It's a bit different. I'm like, give me back the 40 grand I dropped on the business degree and give me that first 18 months running the meat business for Mum and Dad. That was much more valuable. Give me back the 40 grand and I'll just start my own first business and figure it out as I go. I learned way more that way than I ever did doing the study. Don't limit yourself if you don't have a business degree. It moves fast. The environment we're in moves fast. That the degree stuff is out of date before you really even get going. You don't need a degree to run a business. You are doing great without it. And from there, I then headed over to Thailand. This is probably a story for another day, but I landed in Thailand on the day of the Boxing Day tsunami. And I was going to visit some friends and travel with them for a little bit and do some rock climbing for 6 weeks. And it was amazing. And I had an epic time, first of all, helping clean up after the tsunami and then exploring and actually learning how to scuba dive. And I fell in love. I really fell in love with the place and the people and the experience of scuba diving. And I came home and said to my dad, hey, I'm going to go back there. I'm going to go back next peak season in Thailand and I'm going to go and work in diving because I want to go and explore tourism. And I was the first one to talk about going overseas. It had not been on my radar ever. I'd not ever been like, oh, I'm going to go and do a big OE or I'm going to go and do that, which is something that most New Zealand kids do eventually. It hadn't been on my radar at all. And Dad was like, well, you could do this here. And I remember going on this very cool dad and daughter weekend away where he brought me up here to the Bay of Islands and we went on the boat. I guess Dad was in his late 40s, early 50s, and I was in my early 20s. Came out on the boat and went on this overnight cruise in the Bay of Islands. And Dad's, look, you could do the tourism thing here. You could do something like this. And I was like, this is super cool, Dad. And I've really enjoyed coming away with you for the weekend, but I'm still going to do my OE. overseas experience. I think some of the rest of the world might call that a gap year. And I came back from that trip. It was an amazing trip. We did all sorts of cool stuff. We went night kayaking and we went snorkeling and we did island walks and we did all sorts of cool stuff. I think I went scuba diving with the skipper of the boat at the time. It was so much fun. We had a great time. And I was like, that's super cool, Dad. I'm still going to Thailand. Came home, left my job with it and helping in that business and went overseas and went to Thailand and started working as a dive master. And very quickly found that the way that the dive shop was being run was infuriating because it was being run pretty badly. And I ended up stepping into running the dive shop and I did that for a season. Then my husband, he wasn't my husband back then, this guy on the beach that was running a kayaking business was my next door neighbour and we ended up in a relationship and I started helping him with his business. He will tell you I was interfering. He still says that to this day. We ran a kayaking expedition business in Thailand around the islands. It was a super cool business. The busier we got, the less work we had to do. The more the kayaks were rented out and on expedition, the less work we had to do. And as I get to this point in the story, I'm like, okay, I did the digital nomad, laptop, live in the tropics trope that you see lots of business coaches roll out backwards. I was living in Asia, living on a beautiful tropical beach, running business there with my significant other, nearly 20 years ago. And we decided collectively to come home and buy a business here in New Zealand. We came home for my sister's wedding. It was amazing. We did the wedding and Dad was like, oh, you have to go and show Johnny that boat in the Bay of Islands that you and I went on. And we did. He was like, the stuff that they do up there would be super cool where you live in Thailand, because we lived in Phang Nga Bay, which is full of beautiful islands. And Dad was right. It would be amazing there. We started doing some research. You could buy like this beautiful old teak barge that you could have run as an overnight trip for like hardly any money. And we were going to go and do that. We were going, okay, cool. Let's go and get some ideas and look at what's working and what's not working on this business. Take it back to Thailand. And we did. Johnny and I came out to the Bay of Islands. We'd been traveling around a little bit. We went on this boat. And it was amazing. We had such a good time. It was such a cool experience. We had our notebooks and we're taking notes about how we could do it, what was really great about it, what we would do differently if we were doing it in Thailand, how we would incorporate the kayaking business into it. It would be amazing. And then at the end of the trip, we were sitting downstairs at the bar. The same bar still exists today. And having a chat with the skipper, who also happened to own the business, and talking about Asia and all the cool things that we'd done over there. And he said, yeah, I've got this island in Indonesia and I want to turn it into a turtle sanctuary. In fact, I'm thinking about getting out of this business in the next 12 to 18 months. Do you know anyone who might be interested? And I went, yeah, we will be. And my then boyfriend, we weren't even engaged yet, was just about fell off the bar stool. In his head, he's thinking, with what? We earn Thai baht. There's no way that we can earn enough Thai baht to come back here and buy this business. Anyway, we had the conversation, we talked about numbers and we parked it. And we didn't hear anything for a little while. Johnny and I went back to England for a period of time. I think we were back there for 6 months. I could meet his family and his friends because he's English. And save some pounds to go back to Thailand and build a house where we were running our business. Get ourselves in a more settled position there. And 6 months later, after that conversation we had on the boat, I flew home to surprise my mum for her 50th birthday. And I also surprised her with the fact that I was now engaged because my husband had proposed before I came home. And surprised mum, and waiting for me was a letter from the owner of that boat saying, I want to sell my boat on the 1st of December and I want it to sell it to you and Johnny. Do you want it? And we did. And that was in September. So mum's birthday was the 9th of September. And I flew back to England after just visiting, went back to see my husband. We went off to Prague for a few days to celebrate my birthday. And we talked about it and we were like, yeah, let's do it. We had no money, not a freaking dollar. And 3 months later, we were back in New Zealand. We owned that cruise business. We borrowed all of the money in December 2007. And we were running a boat. We were on the water, living together, running a business together in New Zealand, which I was very happy about as a Kiwi kid. And that was living the dream. Followed closely by a reality check, because in March 2008, the GFC came along. And it was not a good time to be in a tourism business. Not at all. And we were, I guess, told that we were lucky that we were the age that we were. You're lucky, you're young. If you go bankrupt, if you go bust, it's okay. You'll come back from it. And Johnny and I just used to look at each other and go, it's not even on the agenda. That's not even something we've even thought about as a concept. We will make this work whatever, regardless of the outside economic conditions. And in hindsight, that was a statement and statements made out of complete and utter ignorance. We didn't know what we didn't know. We just thought if we worked hard and we did the right things, of course we'd be okay. And we did. We worked really hard and we did all sorts of different things that other people weren't doing in the industry, and we survived. Not only did we survive, we thrived. We paid off $250,000 of our debt in that first 6 months, and we built an amazing team and business, took it to the wholesale trade and really enjoyed it. And that started my story of when you work hard, which when we translate work hard, in my terms, it was work long hours, you get success, because we survived and we paid off and we had this business that we were both really enjoying. Problem with that was it was the start of that really bad habit of assuming that if I just stay busy and I just work hard, I'll get results, which I now know not to be true. And I now know doesn't serve a life well lived in the way that I want to live my life. We didn't just survive in that environment, we thrived. And what happened was other opportunities started to come up. We started acquiring other businesses. We ended up with a travel agent in town, which sold lots of our business, of course, with the cruise, but also lots of other people's businesses. And then over time, that grew. And then we got a bit older and we decided we might like to have a family. And so we had Scarlett. And by this point, the businesses that we owned, we had 2 of them, were going pretty well. They could operate without me, but I like to be involved in everything. I like to be busy. And I was starting to feel a bit bored. And the problem with me feeling a bit bored is I look for something new to do. And what happened was we ended up buying a restaurant. My parents, the family, ended up buying a restaurant in the town that we live in, and I started running that for them. Not only did we buy the business, we decided with the people that we bought the business off to expand it. We doubled the size of it. I ended up project managing a large venue being built over the water, which is an interesting experience, and also the restaurant as well. Now we've got 4 businesses. And about this time, when we opened this second new venue, I went from having a team of 9 to having a team of 90. And I very quickly realized that the skills and tools that were getting me by with a small team were not going to help me with this big team. I was really weak in leading a team and I wasn't doing a good job of it. And so I went off to get some training and development and how that might look. And one of the things I did was I spent 12 months training to be a coach. And part of that training was you had to do some pro bono coaching with people that weren't employed by you. Because obviously for me, the coaching was about, well, yeah, I want to coach my employees, but of course that has a different dynamic. And I chose to coach some other women in business. I think I had about 6 of them. Did it all for free for the first 6 months. And at the end of that 6 months, a number of those ladies were like, how do I keep going? And I was like, I guess you could pay me for it. I put a number on it. It wasn't very much, I don't think, $1,500 or $2,000. And they paid me for coaching. And now I've got a 5th business where I've got the side hustle of business coaching. And it was getting busy and crazy busy. I was working 60 to 100 hours a week. From the outside, this looked really good. I was happily married. I had this gorgeous little girl who was super cute and engaging and fun to hang out with. And we had all these businesses going. And it looked good from the outside, and inside I was starting to die. I didn't feel like I was doing a good job as a mum. In fact, I thought I was doing a terrible job as a mum, because I was never there to drop her off to kindy or pick her up. I was never there often when she went to bed. I certainly didn't get to read her stories very often. My marriage, oh my goodness, we were like ships that passed in the night, like the absolute epitome of that. We slept in the same bed, and that was about all I could say for our marriage at that point, because I'd come to bed after Johnny had gone to bed. I'd get up before he got up. I'd be out the door to do something at the business early hours in the morning. It was just crazy. I ate food from the restaurants because I was at work all the time. I just did not have any time to look after myself. And on top of that, I was giving back to our community. I was involved in the business association and a local community trust that was doing amazing things. And I was giving all my time to that. And it wasn't until on this journey that someone, a coach for me, pointed out that the things that mattered most to me were my business and my community. I went, no, that's not true. It's Johnny and Scarlett. And they went, well, when you look at your calendar and you look at how you spend your money, and you look at how you spend your time and your cash, what it tells me is the most important things to you are your business and your community. And it still makes my chest feel tight when I say that, because that was not the life I wanted to be living. I was living by so many other people's expectations. I was so busy running around and trying to meet all their expectations that I was building a life I didn't want. I don't want 90 employees. I've been there, done that. I now know I do not want that. I like a small team where I can get to know them and I can support them and I can lift them up and they can get to know me and they can hold me to account on what I'm doing. I don't want a great big team. I didn't want to run a restaurant. That was not on the list of things I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a mum that missed everything. You're talking about a mum who missed having her first birthday party. It happened a month late. Scarlett had a 13th month birthday party because I was under pressure with everything else that I was doing that I freaking forgot to do something for her first birthday. At one, she doesn't remember that. She can't tell you that story, but I can tell you that story. And I didn't want the rest of my relationship with my daughter to be full of those regrets, when one of the very reasons that we run a business is to do the things we love with the people we love. And that started the journey really of unpacking it. And over the next 18 months, I guess, we sold 2 businesses. We sold a third one a year later. And I started to get my time back. And I started to be really deliberate about what I was building. And we still have the overnight cruise business that started it all. That trip that I went on with my dad, we still own that boat to this very day. And I run my coaching business where I get to help other women jump over those mistakes that I made because I did stupid on steroids. Like when I look back, I'm like, how did I ever think that was okay? Working 30 hours a week, even working 40 hours a week still feels like a part-time gig for me. And it allows me to do so much outside of work that I love. It means I look after myself better. It means I look after my sleep and my exercise. It means I have friends that I go and do things with. It means that Scarlett and Johnny and I get to travel and adventure. We get to go and have experiences together. And I don't know it all by any stretch of the imagination. And I also know a few things I think will make your journey a little easier. And the Moxie Movement is all about sharing that. That instead of taking you, I don't know, 8, 9 years to figure it out. Maybe even it was a decade. Maybe it even took me 10 years to figure it out and getting all the scars from all the mistakes that I made. I now want to help women like me jump over that stuff. And because I still look at those statistics that I talk about all the time and think this isn't good enough. Women are great at running their businesses. They're great at looking after the people that work for them. They're great at making a positive impact in their community. And yet they are not making enough money in order for it to be seen to be valuable in their households. Around here, we're all about flipping the script on those statistics. We're all about making sure you are the glorious exceptions, that you don't go through that journey that I went through from my early 20s and into my 30s. We're going to help you skip over that stuff because I really want to make sure that we can shatter the limits that have been put on women when it comes to running our business and create a legacy. Not just a legacy of wealth financially, but a legacy where we're doing the work on ourselves, that our children are emotionally and spiritually connected, that our children are physically healthy because they've got role models that they can see are looking after themselves first, not last, because they're self-sacrificing. And our children have role models of how healthy relationships work, of the conversations that have to happen in order to make a significant relationship, an intimate relationship work and run a household and parent. And if that's what you want for your children, if you want to give them all the types of wealth, I hope you'll come on this journey with us, because I've had an awful lot of help along the way. I am absolutely standing on the shoulders of the giants that came before me, and that has been helpful for me. And I want to share my journey, my experience, and lots of my mistakes. And I want to share those people that have helped me on that journey with you. That's what the Moxie Movement is about. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into where I've come from. And I hope that you'll stay with me on this journey as we carry on becoming the glorious exception.